Okay, all right. We're ready. We'll call it to order at 7:02. Since we don't have our name tags tonight, just for the camera, we would do brief introductions. I'm Joe Winrick. I represent Townsend on this board, and I'm the chair.
Al Clausen, Townsend, Vice Chair.
Drew Hazelton, Jamaica.
Lindsay Bertram, Newfane.
Trish Scott at large. Christina Robinson, Jamaica.
Lori Garland, Business Manager.
I'm Bill Antone, Superintendent.
Ken McFadden, Newfane.
Mike Foley, at large.
Great, thank you. In a minute, we'll get additions or corrections to the agenda. If we have any, just for the people that are here, public, if you speak, please just identify yourself for the camera and the town that you live in. So, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda, folks? Anything we missed? Need to add? Cool. Members of the public, if you're here to speak to us about something that's on the agenda, we'd ask for you to wait until that part of the agenda comes up. If you're here to address us on something else, now is your time.
I'm here to address you on something else.
Okay, just identify yourself to the camera, please.
Patty Dixon, and I'm from Jamaica. I have comments about the January 14th meeting. To the West River Modified Union School Board, we are writing to address the disturbing and unfair comments spoken by Mr. McFadden at the January 14th West River Modified Union Board meeting. Specifically, his comment describing Jamaica as a greedy town during discussions at school choice, where the superintendent announced 16 students are transferring out of Jamaica Village School. We find it appalling that a member of the newly formed Unified Union Board would make such a negative and derogatory accusation about something the Jamaica community was totally unaware. Jamaica has always supported the Leland and Gray Supervisory Union and willingly accepted the changes brought by Act 46. The information given that evening about the transferring students was bound to be upsetting and sad for our community, not to mention the Jamaica Village employees. Our school has educated many generations of Jamaica residents, many of whom have gone on to make valuable contributions to our state and our country. Several of our present and past parents have spent uncounted hours of volunteer time to give our students extras that tax dollars could not support. The thought of losing our school is difficult, but as always, we are open to exploring any and all for our students, options for our students. This incident reflects on the entire board, not just one member. We call on the board to realize the seriousness of this incident and discuss how it wants to be perceived by the communities it serves. This type of insensitivity should not be tolerated. The actions the board takes around this, plus this incident, plus development of plans and actions to ensure this type of insensitivity is not repeated, should be an immediate priority. And I have a copy here of the Code of Ethics for the Vermont School Board members. And the last one, I don't know if this is signed by our board, but respect my peers, my constituents, and confidentiality considerations. Voice opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like as the chair, I would apologize on behalf of the entire board. I know we've spent a lot of time working together, and I think that, you know, it is, you raised some very valid points. It's important for us to remember that we represent this larger community, and the lines that get drawn like that are that they're counterproductive for all of us. You know, we're a bigger, broader district. We're learning how to do this, and you know, I think that was just a learning curve mistake. But we do need to be cognizant of that kind of stuff and not let that happen. That serves no purpose and does not move anything forward for us at all. And I don't think that, though, I hope that that doesn't, I hope that that doesn't set any kind of a tone and reflect on the board. I don't think that was our intent. That was just kind of a heat of the moment discussion, and we need to remember that stuff shouldn't happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of upset people in Jamaica.
I understand, and I think they have every right to be, and on behalf of the board, I apologize. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that, but I think that I owe you at least that.
Well, my frustration, I'll speak to it, because my frustration really isn't with Jamaica, but the frustration is with the fact of, now, this is not only my opinion, but a lot of people's opinion, that Act 46 is going to force schools, the smallest population in districts, to close. Because that's the best way to save money. And,
Schools have to vote.
yeah.
The town vote.
What is that for the first 5 years?
Actually, under our articles, it's perpetuity. No school can be closed without an affirmative vote of the town in which that school is situated.
Right, but articles can be amended.
That would take an affirmative vote of all the towns as well.
Again, I thank you for understanding the fact that that was a very inappropriate thing to be said at a meeting when the citizens of Jamaica had no idea what was going on. And thank you.
I understand. Anybody else? No? Anything else? Okay. Do we have any correspondence? Anybody? I don't have any written emails, letters, nothing.
I have just someone sent me a little announcement from Jamaica that, tomorrow night from 7 to 8, they're organizing a meet the candidate night at the town hall, at the church from 7 to 8. So if anyone everyone from this board is invited to participate, especially maybe if you're up for re-election. So that's tomorrow night, 7 to 8.
This is the town of Jamaica sponsoring?
Town of Jamaica.
So they're really looking for town candidates.
Or at large board.
Or at large.
Yeah, exactly.
There are no at-large board members up
Okay.
on this board
Okay.
this year.
Got it.
Anybody's running against
Right.
current board members.
No, exactly. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock,
7 to 8 o'clock?
7 to 8 at what church?
There's only one.
There's only one? Okay. This is news to me, I didn't even know there was one. I'm like, what, there's a church?
The only
Right
church
on
in the
Main
building.
Street.
Okay. Oh, I do know where it is, yeah.
Maybe you should go to this. It'll be good for you. You can find the church, you find Jamaica.
I do know where Jamaica is.
Who knows what else you'll find.
Yeah, who knows? All right, thank you for that. Moving right along, old business. Lori, you have a budget update for us. We've got the final equalized pupil numbers.
We do. This has been a roller
Dramatic
coaster
music?
ride. Yes, dramatic.
you sing?
Hmm?
You can say.
No, you don't want that. I sound
Be
better.
dramatic.
Is there any chance there are changes again?
No, these are final, right?
So we're
This will
done?
not
They will not
change?
change now?
I do not, never say never. I'm
This is what we have
not
as of
this year.
tonight.
I won't make that commitment to you, no.
Yeah, years past.
The ratio, the equalization ratio has been frozen.
The board doesn't have.
We don't have that.
Oh, I thought you did. Sorry.
No,
I was waiting for the great reveal.
Oh,
you shouldn't give us to
Unless
us
you're just gonna
after we've
speak to it,
listened
then,
to you,
yeah.
because now we'll just read.
I know, that's true. Okay, so as you get your papers, so the equalized pupils actually increased by 1, so that's always exciting when it goes up and not down. So
We
that
found a kid hiding.
helped by basically a penny, so that was good news. And the front page that you have is just really representing what are the important pieces of this. The budget represents a 4.78% increase over the combined budgets. And most of that, as we discussed in previous meetings, is really made up of two different areas, the special education increases and then the building increases. So really, when you add up the $645,000 of increases, and we look at what the budget actually increased of $538,000, really your operational expenses have gone down. So again, another important thing to keep in mind as you talk at town meeting, if questions come up, this is important information. And then, just of note, these are the different areas. This is all in the summary that we did, will all be part of the budget that goes out to people. So then on the back of your page, I just want to talk a little bit about the tax rate comparison. Because I thought this has been really an important conversation to have as we look at the comparison to last year's tax rates. So the top grid has the tax rate by town after the CLA, and this is how it was seen on everybody's tax bill. So this is what, when you go to pay your taxes, this is what your tax rate was in your particular town in fiscal year 19, and so then versus 20. But this was before the governor used the $58 million to infuse, or to lower tax rate, an infusion of $58 million. And, so yes, you're comparing that to what was on the tax rate, but let's talk about what people actually voted on at town meeting. What was the tax rate that they assumed would happen at town meeting? So that's the second grid. So you can see that, the tax rate, there's not as much of a fluctuation because of what you presented on your individual budgets at town meeting. So I just wanted to make that really clear to everybody. And, it's, the only anomaly of this whole thing is actually Jamaica. So it's nice you all are here from Jamaica. Because Jamaica actually was reappraised last year. I think you probably remember that. And the reappraisal didn't come through until after town meeting. And your CLA dropped. So what was presented at town meeting was lower, actually, than what your tax bill was. So the governor's money didn't actually help you as much as the other towns. So that's what the anomaly is when you look at the numbers. You can see Jamaica's went up. So it was basically, you went from fiscal year 19, what we were planning for with the CLA was 107%, almost 108%, and it dropped again just after town meeting to 101. So, and that's where it stayed right this year. Wow. And then yes, Townsend was the other big CLA drop. Their CLA went from 108 to 99. So.
Ouch. Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's
So of course, I just, again, a reminder that what can still have an effect on this tax rate is the yield, and that's how the governor used the one-time money is that he increased the yield, so taxes went down. The per pupil threshold still can technically change, and, like I said, the governor could make another decision on what to do with the yield. So, and I think I've checked in with everybody, there isn't any reappraisals going on this year for any of the towns, so the issue with Jamaica shouldn't happen. So I just wanted to update all of you on that as we start approaching town meeting. Yes, Al?
What would the tax rate be in Townsend if we didn't get the break via Act 46?
So that the CLA did not go down
Yeah,
so far?
just Townsend, for example, $1.91, so it would have been
8 cents more.
$1.99, right? $1.92?
Yeah, just let me plug it right into my formula. How about that?
if we didn't get the incentive, it would just be 8 cents more on everybody's tax rate, right?
So your tax rate would have gone down, would have been $1.76.
No, that's CLA. With the CLA not changing?
If the CLA had stayed at 108%?
No, no, no.
Oh, no, no,
Incentive, the 8
Just the,
cents.
just the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
What would the percentage of benefit?
I'm just thinking it would be another good comparison to say,
Yeah.
hey, if without merger and Act 46, here's
7.4.
Sure, so when I did the presentation, which is up on your website, I did basically calculate all of the different incentives that you got for merging, and it was actually a total of like 20 cents on the tax rate. But just to say, if you didn't get the 8 cents, right, your tax rate would go up 22 cents, as seen on your tax bill in Townsend.
Wow.
So everybody's would obviously go up. 11 cents, what you presented last year.
that would be a nice little nugget to present to the town.
Do you want me to add this to this sheet, so you have it as a
Yeah, that would
talking
be a
point?
huge shock effect, yeah, that'd be really good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just the incentive?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This, you know, 2 pager that Lori gave us is actually the information that, you know, everybody's gonna have to go to town meeting. So, you know, Al's question and request for an addition, if anybody else has something that they think their town might ask or might come up that's specific, or that they think is specific to theirs, you should, you know, if you've got it now, certainly ask. If not, send it to me in the next week or so that we can get it out ahead of town meeting. I don't wanna keep Lori working like day of stuff,
Well,
but
okay, keep going.
reasonably, if there's something that you think you need to be able to present at town meeting, I mean, we can answer factual questions. If they have in-depth questions at town meeting about the budget or something that's going on with West River, we really need to encourage them to come to the budget information meeting
Right,
that
yeah.
we'll hold as a board, where we can actually, you know, answer theoretical stuff. I mean, town meeting presentation by an individual board member is kind of limited to facts.
Right, and it is, just to clarify too, the 3-year comparison that the state provides that is required to be in your town reports is actually not correct now because of the equalized pupil issue too. So it's going to be confusing for people, because we had to get those out to be printed, and the equalized pupil changed, so.
I have a question.
I think, Ken, did you?
That's right, I'll, you let him
Okay,
go
go ahead.
first, it's fine.
I know Wyndham owes some piece of this whole puzzle. Where's our, what's the story for Wyndham? I know we owe, at least for our high school kids coming here, even though we're not part of the whole district.
Right, that was presented at Wyndham's last board meeting.
Okay.
But it's around 62 cents
Okay.
roughly.
The increase?
No, that would be what they would add to their elementary tax rate, you know, because they're still in a situation right now where you all were before, where you had an elementary tax rate, a primary tax rate, and you had a piece of the secondary. So their piece of the secondary is
62
somewhere in the 62 cent
Thank you.
range.
Thanks.
Ken, did you?
Yeah, when we were setting up all the articles and everything else, and we were talking about what's gonna happen with, and there was the incentives came in because some towns were gonna go up higher and other towns were gonna go, you know, it was gonna fluctuate. That there wasn't gonna be any more than a 5% increase per year.
5% either way, right?
Right.
Or decrease?
Right.
Yeah.
So how does that work when I'm looking here and I'm seeing that Jamaica has 6.6% increase and Newfane has a 6% increase?
Right. So I haven't had any direction from the AOE on that piece of the law, because that was, I believe, in the law. And I'm not sure what they're basing it on. Are they basing it on what was actually on the tax bills? Or are they basing it on before the one-time money?
Well, that
So
might-
I am,
All right, go ahead.
yeah, I'm working on that aspect
Okay.
of it. I have not gotten clear guidance on how that's going to work.
Okay, because I would like an answer before town meeting if possible.
Before town meeting or before your budget
Well,
information?
it would be nice before our town meeting because, you
I'll
know,
see what I can do.
I would say that Lori is
all I know is I'm saying,
responsible for the timing of the AOE getting her that info.
Right.
right, okay, so what, yeah, well,
I've been
hopefully you can
asking
get it by
for
the
it.
time this board has its informational meeting.
Right.
Yeah, we will push hard for that one.
Right.
You have a question?
Yeah, Lori, I know that the 8 cents declines over 4 years, and you said that there was roughly 20 cents of incentives that was built into this, so, and those are all temporary, right?
Not all of them, no. Some of them, one in particular, because you merged, you get to keep your small schools grant.
Okay.
So that you will get to keep and apply to your budget, as long as they have that. grant. And I'm trying to remember my slideshow of what they all were. The 8 cents definitely goes down.
And so what I'm getting at is what else would we be losing in the next couple of years?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll, let me see if I can pull that up so I can speak to it better.
Okay.
Lori, just a question on Jamaica's before and after. The after is higher than the before?
Yeah.
Is it?
Nope,
right?
that's because
That is
of
right?
this, the issue that they had with the CLA changed things.
Never mind. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what happens with a complicated bit fund. Yep. Anybody else? Okay, if it comes to you in the next week or two, email me, we'll get it to Lori, and we'll get an updated sheet out in the email so that everybody has the same information at town meeting. Thanks. There was no policy committee, but do we have an update? Do we have that, Ken?
Well, Bill and I were discussing, we were going over a couple of policies, and we're wondering if, since at the WCSU level, we do policy, and all those policies we have to follow anyway, because we're all in the district, right? We're all in the same supervisory unit, that we should just get those policies vetted and then pass them on to the other boards, right? Is that what we finally came down? We need to discuss it at the WCSU meeting to figure out how everybody wants to do it, but it just makes sense to me that the WCSU does a policy on whatever, and we do the same policy again, and River Valleys does the same policy over again. And, you know, all the other towns do all the same policies over and over again. If we're all in the same district, we still gotta abide by the same policies of the WCSU because we're a member of that board. So why are we, you know, duplicating and duplicating and duplicating?
I think it's a great idea. I know in the past, we've had discussions at the WCSU board about having policy come from the WCSU and go down, and there were so many constituent boards that no one wanted to give up that level of control. There were so many individual school districts, and the districts all wanted to control their own policies. But you bring up a good point. Now that there are less districts, there's West River, River Valleys, and Marlboro in the WC, and Wyndham. There's less. We may be able to take more policy up to that top level, and there would be less than policy work at the individual board level. Yes?
I would personally think that it makes sense to have the policies come to us for either we approve or we change it, but it come from the district to us first. The district says, yes, the district approves, now it's our turn, but I think we should still have a yay or nay on it, because we may feel differently about it.
Well, things like the VSBA required policies, those could certainly be adopted at the district level.
Excuse me.
The required policy, does VSBA require them, or is
How
it?
does VSB require us to have a
It's
policy?
statute.
It's statute
They just
requires,
organize.
I'm sorry,
Statutory
VSBA writes
They
them.
organize.
I misspoke, it's the statute that, but like the required policies that WCSU had them. And there could be individual tweaks, but it could be simplified and streamlined, maybe.
Yeah, I think that is exactly
Yeah.
what Ken had in mind, is that take it from that top level, and then if there's very particular things to your building or your grade levels offered or whatever, then you can manipulate it that fits your thing. But to actually have it vetted at that top level so that you can say, yeah, this works for us, and then you're done, versus looking at each one.
So what if there was, how would that work if there was, I don't have an example, but theoretically some policy that the district said, this is how we want to do things, and then this board felt differently about it?
So
Well-
each district adopts a policy. A
So we-
supervisory union could vet it,
Right,
but legally,
we would have.
to
to
Howie's
adopt it.
point, it's got to be the legal entity district. And so
Okay.
we still have multiple legal entity districts.
Perfect.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Sure.
About policy. Where are these policies actually coming from? Who's writing them? I mean, you're not having these policy committees and writing them up.
No.
VSBA.
They're coming from the Vermont School Boards Association.
Yeah.
And who writes them at Vermont? Are they getting them from some other entity?
They have a legal,
They have a,
a legal.
Some feds, there's usually statutory references on the bottom of each
that's
policy that we
coming up with
adopt.
these policies and feeding them downstream.
But like last year, I found a policy that technically violated 2 federal laws. It would be very easy to bring it in compliance. You could literally just change like 3 words in 2 sentences and it'd be compliant. That policy has come from VSBA. At Bill's request, I actually reached out to VSBA. We're still waiting. It's been months. We're still waiting to hear back from them. And it's so, at face value, it's so easily to see what the problem is. So I agree with Lindsay. I think that we should still, and I know that the rest of the board seems to agree too, that we should still have say to it.
It's more of the procedures
Right,
that
as
would
opposed to the
pertain to
policy.
different districts than it would be the policy.
Yeah, I think you're right, too. Well, so when we reconfigure the WCSU board, the board representative, board representatives from the various,
I think it's going to be on the agenda, right?
You requested it, so it is there.
all right.
Did we discuss town meeting communication? I know we kind of,
Yeah,
touched on it.
we
Can we go back to that?
Sure, sorry. You have, specifically what? We have the cheat sheet with the information, the answers at town meeting should be primarily factual. If you have questions that, would require sort of deliberation or more than, come to the budget information meeting and answer the really hard budget questions. What else are you looking for?
I guess I'm really looking for just a commitment that what we're going to put out is factual. Because I think that it's very easy to stand up in the town meeting and give, a personal opinion on the school board's agenda as opposed to the facts and decisions of this board. So I think as board members, we have a responsibility, if we're going to be standing and representing this board, that we represent the opinions of this board, not of the individual. If this board has made a vote, for example, and supports a budget, then the school board members need to be standing up and supporting that budget and the decisions made by this board. If you're going to stand up as a board member and bash the activities of this board, well, then you shouldn't be on the board. It is a violation of the code of ethics that we just heard about, and I really think that we need to hold each other accountable for being responsible, respectful board members that support the position of this board.
So, I was going in a different direction, but I think a lot of towns have pre-town meeting, right? I don't know if you guys do. So, yes, it'd be great to have all of this tied up prior to that. I think Townsend's is February 26th. Does everybody else have a pre-town meeting to kind of swear?
Nope.
No, are we alone on this one? Why am I not? Why am I surprised? Yeah, why am I surprised? Yeah. But I would also, maybe to pile on what Drew said, is that this, once we get it tied up and have all the additions, deletions, corrections, whatever, that this is obviously put up onto the website and as a handout at all of our town meetings, so everybody has the correct information.
Yeah, it should be. Should be.
Can we also put together a little, maybe a cheat sheet as to how the voting process of this budget is going to go? Because I believe there's a lot of confusion that exists about how this budget is going to work. Many towns have been used to voting at their town meeting on their school budget.
Yeah.
And voting on, their high school budget separately. So maybe we could come up with a very simple one-page for cheat sheet for the board members as to this is how this year's vote is going to go. And if this vote is to pass, or once the vote is done, how are the votes going to be tallied? I think that's important for people to know.
Okay.
I think it's important to know if this vote passes, what happens, and if this vote does not pass, what happens. And we need to be putting out the same message, so that it's consistent.
If it passes, it's the budget and we move forward, and if it doesn't pass, we were asked that in a couple of meetings, like, what do we do if the budget doesn't pass? And the answer has really been, until it doesn't pass, we haven't had a discussion about what differences we would make. As far as, like, traditionally, your budget doesn't pass because it's too high, and you go back and you find some more cuts, unless you have some very specific information about, your budget didn't pass because this reason. The tradition for a non-passed budget has always been to cut it. The one time on the Leland and Gray board where the budget didn't pass, and we started talking about cuts, we actually got a petition to represent the same vote, the same exact budget, because it was on a really bad voter turnout day because of the weather, and we had to go back, we went back with the same budget, but, I'm not sure we can, the point of that whole thing is, I'm not really sure we can say what happens. If the budget doesn't pass, then the board is tasked with reworking the budget to present again, is what we can say, as simple as that. How we rework it, we haven't discussed it, we don't know. Right?
I would just say it might be a little different this year because of everything that's been going on. And, there was a lot of contention about some parts of this budget. So, it might not be as simple as just cutting things, when almost 200 people have a certified petition and the board ignores it. That frustrates voters. So, we'll see what happens.
That's one of those statements
Mhm.
that you shouldn't be saying,
Well, that's your
because it's
opinion.
not true.
It is true. The board did not
ignored
act, the board did
a
not act on the
certified
certified petition.
That was ignored by the board. That's the exactly type of conversation that is disrespectful of this board.
In your opinion.
There's no opinion.
The board did not ignore that. We had lengthy discussions about that, and we chose not to listen to that.
All right.
We chose not to follow that piece of advice, okay? And it, I don't think you can say, if the budget is voted down, that is somehow a referendum
No,
on
but
that particular thing.
Right, but all
We-
summer long, people were saying, hey, the people who don't like this get a choice at the budget. That's what people like Drew said in the summer at the retreat.
We've said that about a number of issues, whether or not we have family and consumer science, whether or not we move to 6th grade, whether or not we furnish student meals.
Right.
So to play guess, it'd be
No,
it's
well,
difficult
guess
to
it, right, no, I
guess
don't
at
have
what it is. So
information
to
different
say
than-
like we would change a certain thing based on that is
That'd be a pretty reasonable starting point, but that's, anyway,
You're-
moving on.
Yeah, can I say something too, in reference to what you're saying, Drew? This is the first time in 20 years on a board that I have not voted in favor of a budget. Okay, it's the first time I've actually stood up and not supported the budget. So when people come to me and say, do you support this budget? I can't lie to them and say that because everybody else voted for it, my view of it's changed. I'm not going to get up and give an interview to the newspaper and say, don't vote for it, because I think that would be a little bit out of line. But you can't expect people to lie about their position because the board voted another way. I mean, you're right, this is a very contentious issue. You know, there were big changes made in the operations of these schools that a lot of people really strongly objected to, and I saw them all out here. So, you know, look, I'm not going out bashing the budget, but if you're asking me to get up there and lie to people and say, hey, I think this budget is great, I can't do that either, in all good, you know, in good faith.
I'm asking for the truth. I'm asking for you to put out factual information.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all.
I think the line of separation, you don't have to lie about it, but you just have to say, that's the budget that the board put forth, and now the voters have an opportunity to speak.
If you think
Personally,
That's a fair enough statement.
I have problems with it, but it is the board's budget, and the public should speak on it now. And you know, as a board member, you know, you've almost lost the right to, you know, support it or not support it. It's like, you know, that's the board's budget, the board's made its decision, it's now the public's chance to speak. You certainly have a right to your own personal opinion, but as a West River board member, to say, you know, I don't support the budget as a board member and I think you should vote it down is I think, wrong as a board member at this point, because the board spoke. I mean, even, you know, while we debate things, it's all up in the air, but once the motion is made and passed, and that's the you know, the will of the board, then as board members, it's our duty to try and carry that out as best we can until we're told somehow that it's going to be different. Yes, Al?
So I think there's another real issue that we may face. So basically between March and July 1st, lame duck session, right? I mean, so we're going to have some people that are up for a vote. You know, they get a 1-year term or a 3-year term for 3 months, for a real 3-month.
Oh, with the other
Session.
boards.
Yeah, with the
Right.
towns board, et cetera.
Right.
So I think we're okay in towns, but I think we probably face the possibility that some boards will have trouble getting 5 people or 3 people that will get reelected. So I think that could be an issue, and I don't know, just using towns as an example, if we can't find 5, what can we do legally to get the board down to 3 for the last 3 months,
You can.
4 months? Okay. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm just
You can bring it
throwing
up-
that possibility out there.
You can bring it up at town meeting, that if the Townsend School District wants to bring it, because Newfane itself used to have a 5-member board, and we brought it down to 3. Before we.
But did you have to have it as an article, or did you do it as other business?
I don't remember how we did it, but you can probably do it under other business. Or if you have 3 members, then you just have 2 open seats on the board.
I think other business is non-binding usually, but
Yeah.
I would say
Right.
for that one, I mean, I think that's a wait and see what happens with each individual board. I mean, it's not really
I
our
think we're
board's
going to be
thing,
okay, I'm just thinking
but,
about it.
you know, what happens with each individual board, and then we can reach out and get some legal guidance. I know there were some where it's like, well, since nobody got elected, then the other people can continue on, and, you know, we couldn't reorganize, so that, because last year Townsend forgot to warn
Yeah.
the positions of Twyla and myself, and so statutorily, we just continued until there could be a special meeting held, and then we were elected for the Leland and Gray positions. So, you know, depending on what happens at town meeting, we may have to sort through some lame duck issues with the bill and statute, but we can figure it out.
Brookline
We'll figure it out.
forgot to put in a Brookline School District member on their warning. But after town meeting, the town can appoint somebody. The select board can
Before the
appoint.
next natural election cycle.
Right, and so that'll cover
I mean,
that.
it's a good point, Al, but I think we ought to kind
Yeah.
of see what happens, and then
I'm hoping.
You
for
can always
not
duck
to.
and say it's not the West River Board's thing, it's the other board, you'll have to get back to them.
And if you're on that board, don't think that you're just walking out the door on July 1st, because there will be straggling.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
of
those
course.
boards stay in existence until they actually decide.
December 31st.
December 31st is the deadline,
Right.
but they can wind it down whenever they want. As soon as they, when they're done, they can wind
They
it
can
down.
stay, right, they can
But they
stay.
can stay until December
Right.
of 2019, right?
They might want to enjoy, keep meeting. It'd be a lot of fun.
Only if somebody's bringing cookies, I think. Okay.
Another?
Meeting,
Yeah, there you go.
meeting with no business.
Anything else? Yeah, those are great. Anything else on town meeting, folks? All right, again, if more comes to you, email me, we'll get it. Okay, so policy, we're good, right? We can go to the legislative update, which we were gonna make Emily do. She's stuck in her whip duties and couldn't make it tonight. I did talk to her, she says, in terms of education, legislation and what's going on right now, the VSBA report is accurate and as current as she could do. She also said that, you know, it is entirely possible that as whip, she might not be quite as tuned into the education stuff as she was when she was on the House Ed Committee. So if we see anything that we're curious about, anything we want more information on, email her, she'll let us know. But, you know, we may actually hear about a development ahead of her just because she's taken on that larger role.
I could say something to this. Just that it's in court right now, and it's, the temporary injunction is, you know, we should hear within this week, we should hear from the court on whether there's going to be a temporary stay.
Yeah, the court's expected to rule this by Friday.
And
I
that's
think,
probably
isn't it?
the next activity we can expect on this thing.
Well, and that would just stop everything. The Conlon Amendment, as you probably all know, passed the House. And that puts that, you know, fairly limited, in a fairly limited way, slows down the potential merger for districts who never took it to a vote and are now being told by the to merge. They would get until 2020 to do it. For districts who did go through the merger process but then chose not to merge, but that have been asked to merge now, that would be up to the board. That would be up to the boards like us to decide whether we wanted to take it on in 2019 or 2020. And that's over in the Senate now, and you know, right now, there's really not a lot of discussion about what's going to happen in the Senate with it.
Not until the court case, is what I hear.
There's a lot of waiting to see what happens with the court case. And, you know, then who knows what the Senate will do with it, depending on what happens with the court case. So that's all I know about that one.
Well, so just to follow up on both of those things, so the Conlon Amendment would require this board if the language stayed the same. So imagining the parallel, so there's one universe of the court case, and then there's the legislative remedy. And so the Conlon Amendment would require this board to warn a vote to vote in or out pre-K through 6 Wyndham. And on that vote, the vote would be required before June 30th of this year and would have a start date of, if it was a positive vote to receive Wyndham, this board would have to decide if it was going to be July 1st, 2019 or July 1st, 2020 as part of the vote. And Howie's exactly right. The Senate is waiting to see what happens with the court case before they decide to take up the Conlon Amendment to decide how that plays out. But in terms of this board, that is a new consideration.
So we will likely know by our next meeting.
So your next meeting, yes, because
Yeah.
crossover will happen. I agree with Howie that an injunction should be ruled on by this Friday at the latest. And then the Senate can decide, they're waiting to see how long that injunction goes, all that.
Well, and we'll also know by our next meeting, the results of the Wyndham Town meeting, where they've warned articles to both withdraw from Leland and Gray and from the West River District. And then depending on how those articles, depending on the outcome of those warned articles, then our board and the Leland and Gray board would have actions that they would probably want to take. I know we had talked about some of the financial impacts of that, and you know, we have sort of high-level financial impacts of what happens if that goes either way?
Yeah, you guys asked last meeting for
Yeah.
Lori.
Would you like to talk about that now?
It was supposed to come out through the Conlon amendment.
Okay. Well, here we go. Let's take a few. Okay, so this is some higher level, looking at, if Wyndham votes, they would have a positive vote to, do you have enough there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I just couldn't get them to
Oh,
separate.
all right. If they vote to exit Leland and Gray's district, then basically the financial impact is we're gonna remove the 8.83 equalized pupils from your 519 that I just was talking about. We would assume that the 7 students which is made up of the current 6th graders and the 4 that are in Leland and Gray now, would then tuition to Leland and Gray. So that would be additional income. So that would be added to your offsetting revenues. Okay. There's also approximately a $50,000 one-time bond payment to get out of the district. So for fiscal year 20, that could be added as offsetting revenue. Yes.
Just clarification on bullet point number 2, the 7 students,
Mhm.
that's current 6th graders, next year's 7th graders.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's really just a result of a penny on the unified tax rate because, you're removing those equalized pupils. So that goes from $1.90 that is where we're at right now to $1.91. So I took a quick, do you want to talk about?
But
20?
that's using the one-time 50,000 to bring that down?
Yes.
So it's really not 150. The
Right,
following
if you
year,
take
don't
the
have
50
that.
off. So then I took a look at fiscal year 21. I didn't want to really go out any further than that. I mean, there are too many variables to try to, get to a tax rate. But if you look at, let's just assume that the expenditure budget stays the same, the equalized pupils count stays the same, and the yield stays the same. And then there are 7 5th graders currently right now at Wyndham. So they would be tuitioning, we would assume that they would tuition to Leland and Gray at that point. So that would increase the revenues, $243,000 of tuition revenues. And that would stay, as long as they all came to Leland and Gray. If they had the option, they could go anywhere depending on how Wyndham set it up. But this is saying that they're coming to Leland and Gray. So the tax rate, I did take into account that the incentive is going to decrease. That was the only sort of, angle I played on this, because we do know that that's going to happen. So the tax rate would be $1.90. So no real difference from what you have now. I do think it's important to look at, the reason I put the ADM count on here is because it's important to look at, they have 7 5th graders, but if you look at 2, 3, and 4, they have 0 students. So, you're gonna have that revenue for those years that the students come to Leland and Gray, and then that'll drop off. So you're gonna have sort of a roller coaster there at some point where there won't be the tuition revenue.
But that would apply whether we are part of this, you
Absolutely,
wouldn't have that
absolutely.
revenue as
Yeah.
state funded
Right,
those kids
and
either.
the equalized pupil will change,
Right.
right? So you're right in that.
Right, so that's a wash.
So then Wyndham is requested by the West River board voters to come into West River. So this is if they just came in. So that, basically you're adding their expense and you're adding their revenues and you're adding their equalized pupil. So they have I don't have on here, 18.03, equalized pupils in the elementary. So those would be added to the equalized pupils, and so then the tax rate comes in at $1.91. Part of that, I noted on here because their budget is, has increased by 16% this year, which is not, sort of out of the
one-time.
ordinary. It's not typical, so. So you're bringing in a lot more expense with not a lot of offsetting revenue is the issue, when they're coming in as a total. Typically, they're, somewhere, would be somewhere around the $400,000 expense budget, or a little less.
So on your 2021, those fifth graders would then be sixth graders, so they'd have to be coming here.
No, they'd be seventh graders.
In '21,
We'll keep it on 6th grade.
This
Not
is
if you're-
18.
Not if you're in the West River. If we vote to have Wyndham come in, then the sixth graders would come here.
Right, but that would be
The
we're talking
following
2 years. yeah.
2 years, okay. And there wouldn't be any at that point.
Correct.
again, really high level,
So
not,
you'd have a-
it's
You'd
too
have
many
a
things to
school
read.
with 13 students.
Assuming that everything stayed static.
And the numbers that you're using for expenses up there are based on 13 students?
The expenses are static,
Right.
and the ADM travels. So everything is the same. So it's assuming that whatever Wyndham pays this year, they pay next year, and they pay in '21. I mean, we built a budget for '20 for Wyndham, and so we're just assuming ADM stays the same, and expenses stay the same, and revenue stays the same.
It's a lot of assumptions there.
A lot of us went.
What else can you do?
Yeah, I don't know if you can't, how would you not, you have to make some assumptions. You could make other assumptions, you could say.
I mean, we can get to a much deeper conversation once Wyndham votes
Right.
at town meeting, once the lawsuit has some sort of direction, once the Senate decides what they're going to do with the Conlon amendment. I mean, it could be very likely that this board has to warn something in May for a vote right before June 30th, because you don't have the information till then. It's very possible that the lawsuit's decided in the next month, and then there's absolute clarity there. So I think you're just going to have to be prepared to continue this conversation as more information comes in. But as a high level for right now, just because the amendment passed, and because you guys had asked last time, we wanted to give you at least a picture of what we know.
So there, sorry, can I ask another question?
No, go ahead.
So there are two separate votes that have to be warned for Wyndham to get out of both Leland and Gray and the new district?
Yes, they're two completely separate paths. So
At the same time?
you could do it at the same time, but you don't have to.
Okay.
The requirement of this board is if Wyndham votes on March 5th to exit Leland and Gray or West River 7 through 12, they warned it appropriately because it's lower, then this board has to wait 30 days to see if there's any reconsideration vote. So then on April 5th, this board would have to warn a vote of all of the other towns to ask the question, should Wyndham be allowed out in the 7 through 12 current union structure?
And is that commingled or is that affirmative by each individual town?
That is not commingled, that is by each individual town. So if one town votes no, then it's no, and then you wait 30 days for another reconsideration vote on any of those votes, positive or negative. And then after that 30 days, it'll be certified by the Secretary of State, and then a decision is rendered.
Sounds like a lot of votes coming up.
Yes, it would be nice to, if this board is put in a position of having to warn two separate votes, to do them at the same time, and have some serious information outlay about what it means. Because it could get really, it could be explained really well, it could be very simple, or it could be explained very poorly, and it could be very complicated.
Voter fatigue. how many times do we send them to the polls to vote?
Luckily, there's not a lot of voting that would happen in May or June, so it might
So voting
Like-
turnout's not gonna be high.
spurn their excitement.
No snowstorms.
No snowstorms, we'll give them something really interesting to talk about. You know, we don't warn both votes at the same time.
But on that effect, I mean, there's a lot of ways to think about this because, you know, the voters need to be informed that if they're gonna vote to say, okay, we want to keep Leland, Wyndham in Leland and Gray and put them in this new district, then by the time this is all goes through, they'll have a school with 13 students in it. That only that town can close down that will be on this budget, this board's budget.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, so, you know, the points like this need to be made to the public because these are important factors in deciding, not just, well, you know, it's always been that way, so we're gonna, you know, no matter what, we're gonna make them stay with us even if they want to get out.
No, that's what I mean about how we need to educate
Yes.
factually,
Factually,
without opinion, just factually,
Right.
and let the voters decide. But it's gonna be really important that this board is unified in that factual information that is being shared. But that is work for after the
After
lawsuit
Wyndham
gets
makes
some
its
direction.
There's still some time.
There's still some time there. From the superintendent's perspective, hopefully, our communities will vote in our budget so that those kinds of things that we can start dealing with in April do not include this board directing me to go back and rejigger the budget. But the voters will tell us what to do, and we'll go for it from there.
Yep. Exactly. Alan?
The timing and the amount of the bond set by the state?
By the state, I'm sorry.
Or who sets the amount of 50,000?
Oh, no, it's a calculation that is basically the equalized people divided by the total for West River. Wyndham's equalized people, which is 3.45% of
The remaining bond.
the remaining pupils for
Oh, okay.
West River.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Anything else? All right,
Thank you, Lori.
thanks, Lori. New business, I'm not sure it's new, but Newfane Selectboard meeting update. I know Newfane Selectboard asked Emily to go to the meeting as a legislator, and she asked me to come along just in case things got into the solar field. So I did go, and we explained, we sort of explained things. We answered questions, factual, this is how it works. I know that their lawyer has been in touch and has requested documents from us. I don't think that the two lawyers have spoken yet. But I think that the select board has a better understanding of things. And it seems to me that part of the problem is that they're getting somehow complaints that they're not being allowed to use the property that the school bought from the Lions that has some gazebos or pavilions or something. And they think and we directed them back to the principal to, that's under the control of the principal and that there are policies. And they were wondering if the policies changed when it became our board and would it be a different place to go and did they have to come back to us? Now, again, it's like that policy isn't in place yet from this board and building use. But there's an existing one, and we said we probably, said the board has not been changing policies wholeheartedly, they work currently. If they don't, we probably adopt something fairly similar. But they got a little clarity out of it. I'm not sure if it's entirely over, but at least I think they understand, they've had some of their questions answered.
that is the perfect example of a district policy that pertains to all the schools and grounds, which would be the building use policy, which should be the same for all the schools, but the procedures would be different.
Right. I know this, I know
And those
Building and Gray
are
has a building use
particular
form,
to-
and you
right.
fill it
Those are
out, you
particular
submit
to
it,
that
and it gets
particular
approved,
building.
and then you get to use the building, and they can,
Right.
that's a good example. And I think Newbrook will have to have the same kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So, do you know if there's been attorney?
Our attorney has not told me that he's been contacted.
Okay. So, I guess we'll wait and see, but that's, that's where it is now. Yes, Howie?
I have a request that we start putting on the agenda a report from the advisory committees. When this board was formed, the electorate voted to create it. I remember there was a advisory committee from each school that was supposed to be formed that I have not heard from yet. And I think it'd be really nice as a board to make sure that we're getting input from the various schools. So.
Those are building-based, created by the principal of each building. I'm not aware that they've created those committees yet.
So, just as an
You know,
update,
That's more of a question than anything else.
at the beginning of this year, Townsend was piloting that thing, and they'll be created once this board turns into the operational.
Okay, so we'll see.
July 1st.
So July 1st, we can.
But Townsend is running one right now, so
Okay.
this board can get some input from how that played, from the parents, and
Is
so
that-
that it's,
Is that committee reporting or discussing the current Townsend school board?
we don't know.
Yes.
There. So
So they give you a
they're
written
reporting to the
report,
active.
Not really,
The
not
10
verbal,
meetings?
some,
Oh, nice, good.
yeah, okay.
That's great.
And also part of his, he has a principal's report.
Okay.
Information in there.
So, you're on the Townsend board. Anything, anything interesting coming out of that committee yet?
You know, honestly,
Sorry to
I
put you
don't-
on the
No, that's
spot.
all right. I think he had his first report out in the last principal
Okay, well,
board.
maybe at the next
But-
meeting, you could just see,
Yeah,
let us
absolutely.
know if there's been anything,
Sure.
it's a little premature maybe to add it as an agenda item, but we'll get the Townsend pilot report going.
Thank you.
Thanks, Howie. Okay. Consent agenda, we have 2 sets of minutes, right?
Yes,
14th and the 21st.
you guys should have both of those.
They're both here. Take a quick look at them before we make a motion to approve the consent agenda, because if they need to be pulled out, we can pull them out and make corrections, but I think they looked all right. Any comments, edits?
I was not present and it says I was,
Which one?
for the 21st.
We're here in spirit.
I was, which is why I'm absolutely here.
Okay, we can use that as a Scrivener's error. I don't think we have to pull it for that. You didn't make any motions, I didn't see.
Now, other than that one amendment, then I'd move to approve the consent agenda as amended, minutes as amended,
And you're doing both.
both minutes.
21st and the 14th?
Yes.
All right. Is there a second?
Sorry.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The ayes have it.
Yeah, I found that.
Is there anything in there? One other one.
Well, I will just say.
Al found the report.
Yes, so the Principals Advisory Council has begun, and this is from our last meeting. For our third meeting, we will review our ideas on how to integrate art and community into our school. School has an art opening April 4th and 5th at Newfane Library. students and staff are receiving, I'm sorry, no, that was it, one bullet point.
Okay, thank you. So we're getting there, just
Yeah.
easing in. Nice.
I don't know if you guys know, I should have mentioned this too. Newbrook does a community lunch like once a month, and that might not be a bad idea for the other schools to think about doing. And it's really nice, you know, you get together, get to eat with all the kids and see what's going on and what they're eating, and it's really, sometimes they even do it like when there's something else going on afterwards.
That's part of our new food program, when we take over, yeah. I think that'd be great, you know, show them the kind of nutrition we're giving our children. Yeah, awesome. Okay, is there any other business? I mean, we need an executive session to talk about the collective bargaining agreement. But other than that, anything else, folks? All right, we just need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I think the